Alright people, so welcome to Jumbo IS and welcome to our current affairs lecture series. Now today we are going to cover current affairs from 13th of August. Now look, in this current affairs lecture series we cover a particular day's current affairs within 30 minutes. So it is a very good lecture series for you to get a hold over current affairs on a daily basis. But you will get that hold if you will make this lecture series a part of your daily routine. It should be a daily habit of yours. Okay? Make this lecture series a part of your daily routine until your exams, and you'll really benefit from this because 50% of your paper would be from current affairs, whether it's prelims or mains, right? All right then, enough of the introduction. Let's straight away dive into today's lecture. But first, let's take a look at the list of topics that we shall cover. Okay, so let's begin. So daily current affairs, 13th of August, and here are the topics. Number one topic is related to parliamentary committees because recently the debatable, controversial FCRA bill has been referred to a joint parliamentary committee. Okay, so that brings into focus, well, parliamentary committees. So we'll talk about them. Okay, then we'll talk about solar eclipse. Solar eclipse is upcoming and it is the best time to study sun, especially solar corona. Okay, the outermost layer of sun made up of plasma. So we'll talk about this scientific news. And last topic is related to solid waste management in India because recently Supreme Court of India gave certain directions because these solid waste management rules of 2026 were not being implemented properly. So Supreme Court gave some directions so that they would be implemented properly, right? So we'll talk about waste management in India as well. Clear? So these are the three news items that we shall zero in our attention on. So let's start discussing them one by one. Starting with topic number one, and that is parliamentary committees. Now you see, the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act Amendment Bill, okay, FCRA Amendment Bill is hugely controversial, okay, very controversial. In fact, foreign governments are criticizing India because it deals with foreign funding of NGOs in India, right? America is really unhappy with this. Now the thing is, because this is so controversial, this bill was tabled in Lok Sabha, but because of this rising political pressure, especially from opposition parties, this bill has been referred to a joint parliamentary committee. Joint means members would be from both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, right? Now, parliamentary committees are important devices to analyze a particular bill clause by clause. Because parliamentarians, MPs do not have that much time that they will debate each and every clause of that bill because Lok Sabha session or parliamentary session is limited. So these bills for analysis are sent to parliamentary committees. Their analysis, their detailed analysis informs opposition party members. So they can ask questions and do a informed debate. Okay, there should be an informed analysis of every bill, right? Parliamentary committees are that important. Now the thing is, recently critics have pointed out that parliamentary committees are being seldomly used and the bills have been passed in the recent history. Bills have been passed without parliamentary committee analysis, just like that through voice vote, because the current government has numbers. Now, this really harms the institutional legitimacy of parliament because we expect parliamentarians to do proper debate on each and every clause of the law that has been enacted, right? So in this entire controversy, the role of parliamentary committees is highlighted. Therefore, we need to discuss it. So let's talk about this. Okay, so let's begin. So parliamentary committees. So this was in the news. So FCRA Amendment Bill, well, because it would tighten foreign funding to NGOs, it was controversial, so it was referred to Joint Parliamentary Committee. Now, the word joint over here means that members in this parliamentary committee would come from both Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Generally, parliamentary committees belong to each and every house, but JPCs are, well, they host members from both houses, right? Now, before discussing what a JPC is, let's talk about FCRA bill. Okay, so FCRA regulatory evolution. Okay, foreign funding of NGOs in India. Well, the regulatory architecture has evolved since 1976 to 2026. Okay, in 1976, during the emergency period, Indira Gandhi was worried that there is a foreign hand in these protests in India against her emergency rule. Therefore, she enacted Foreign Contribution Regulation, so enacted during emergency to prevent foreign interference in India's national politics. Then, it was amended in 2020. It barred transfer of funds to other NGOs. So, if there is a foreign funding or a foreign fund which transferred funds to this NGO, well, this NGO can use that money to fund another NGO, and that NGO can use it to transfer another NGO. Basically, they want to hide through these layers, well, sometimes nefarious activities were conducted. Okay, now this foreign fund source maybe did not have good interests of India and they wanted to sabotage certain developmental activities in India. Therefore, they would fund a particular NGO. But funding this NGO would create a direct link and the authorities would get to know. So they used to mask under many transactions. And the final NGO that would receive these funds would do the sabotaging activities. So government banned transfer of funds, foreign funds from one NGO to another. Okay, mandatory SBI Delhi account. You will receive foreign funds only in a bank account, that too kept with SBI, with the Delhi branch. Capped admin expenses at 20%. Okay, your salaries, your building expenses, operational expenses would be 20% of the foreign funding, not more than that. This was done. So this basically tightened the noose on foreign funding. 2026 amendments, proposed amendments, would further tighten this noose. Okay. Stricter operational audits, third-party audits would be strict. Enhanced suspension powers, government can suspend these NGOs just like that. Okay, if they feel that this particular NGO is receiving foreign funds to sabotage India. Okay, digital monitoring of sub-grants. So basically what you need to know is that 2026 amendments basically further tighten regulations on foreign funding. Now some people say that this is important for India because foreign hands are destroying India. We need to control that. But some people say that government is basically trying to trample all opposition voices in the country. Some NGOs do the work of opposing certain government activities. So government is basically, we have a fundamental right, freedom to form associations under Article 19. Government is trampling that. So there are both voices. Right? Now, what are the key changes in 2026? Though we'll discuss it in detail once this bill gets passed. But for now, there are 3-4 major changes proposed under 2026 amendment bill. Enhanced operational audits, expanded suspension power, Ministry of Home Affairs to extend FCRA certificate suspensions beyond 180 days. Okay, you can be suspended beyond 180 days. Earlier, the provision was you can only suspend till 180 days and conduct your inquiry against that NGO within 180 days and come to a final decision. But you can suspend it beyond that time period as well. Tightened definition of political nature. Broadens the scope of organization categorized as political in nature, restricting them from receiving foreign contributions. Like I said, further tightened the noose. Okay. Now, the thing is that this was, FCRA is a debatable hot topic. We will discuss it some other time. But what was another topic, another concept that was highlighted through this news was JPC. So what is a JPC? Remember this, that parliamentary committees in India can be divided into two parts. There are standing committees which are permanent in nature. Okay, they will always exist. Their members are elected or selected or nominated every year, but these committees always exist. Then there are ad hoc committees. These committees are created for a specific purpose. Once that purpose gets fulfilled, these committees are dissolved. Now, ad hoc committees can be single house committees or joint committees. For example, this joint parliamentary committee was created to analyze FCRA bill only. Once the analysis would be complete, this committee would be dissolved. But departmental standing committees remain forever. Okay, remember this fact. Now let's talk about this JPC. So JPC is an ad hoc, like I said before, committee set up by Parliament to examine a specific bill, topic, policy matter requiring deep investigation and multi-party consensus. Because members in JPC come from all parties that are represented in Parliament. Plus it's joint, so members come from both Lok Sabha as well as Rajya Sabha. Right? Formed through a motion passed in one house and agreed to by the other, or through joint consultation between Speaker of Lok Sabha and Chairman of Rajya Sabha. What is the composition ratio? Adheres to 2:1 ratio between Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha members. That means if it is a 30-member JPC, 20 would come from Lok Sabha, 10 from Rajya Sabha. Okay? And the members are selected in proportion to their strength in Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. Okay? So if a particular political party has 30% members in Lok Sabha, 30% members would be in this JPC also. Since ruling party has majority numbers, therefore members from ruling party dominate JPC. Generally that is the case. Okay. Cross-party representation, members are nominated proportionally based on party strength in Parliament, making it a micro-representation of legislature. Right? Now, powers and privileges, because they will investigate into this matter of FCRA, so they should have some powers. Summoning powers. authority to summon witnesses, experts, administrative officials, private individuals for evidence. Okay, document inspection can be done by them, oaths and confidentiality. Administers oaths to witnesses, proceedings are conducted in camera to encourage non-partisan deliberation. Clear? Now, parliamentary committees, like I said before, are extremely important because through this, well, Parliament does not, the entire House does not have enough time to discuss each and every clause of every law, every bill. That is really difficult. Therefore, these bills are presented to parliamentary committees whose single task is to analyze that particular bill. And they analyze it clause by clause. They present their report. And based on that report, an informed discussion takes place in Parliament. The level of debate in Parliament becomes enriched. Okay, because of the analysis presented by them. But remember, their report or their advices are non-binding in nature. I mean, they can only make recommendations. It is not binding on the Parliament. Those recommendations are not binding on the Parliament. Remember this part. Now, remember I told you that these days parliamentary committees are being not used that frequently. Okay, they are seldomly being used. And this is being pointed out by various critics that the institutional authority of Parliament is going down because of less usage of parliamentary committees. The quality of analysis, quality of debates is coming down. Okay, so what are the criticism, structural problems, bottlenecks? Number one, marginalization of legislative scrutiny. Parliament's job is to analyze each and every legal proposal, policy proposal presented by the government. But Parliament is able to do that with expertise if there are parliamentary committees. But nowadays, a recent data points out that these parliamentary committees are being used very less. So this is one problem. Then, politicization and party lines. The thing is that members in this JPC would follow their own party line. Okay, if tomorrow an opposition party joins hands with BJP, well, their members would have to toe that line even in the analysis of this bill. Okay, so this is a problem. Then advisory nature of reports. Obviously, the recommendations are non-binding in nature. Plus, even parliamentary committees are given strict timelines. They are not given that much time. There are deadlines. There are resource constraints for investigation and whatnot. Plus, the thing is, within parliamentary committees, since the strength of a particular political party in a JPC would match their strength in Parliament, ruling party generally has more members in a JPC. So, well, non-partisan analysis of a particular bill won't be possible because those members would toe the line of the ruling party. They would always say that this bill is fantastic, right? So this is a problem. And we need to improve the quality of parliamentary committees if we want Parliament to be a genuine, high-performing institution and relevant in today's times. Okay, that's about it. Now let's quickly shift our focus to next news item, and that is solar eclipse, best time to study sun. You see, whenever solar eclipse happens, it is about to happen. Now, what is a solar eclipse? Well, the moon comes in between Earth and sun, hiding a particular portion or sometimes a particular portion of the sun, that is partial solar eclipse, sometimes completely hiding the sun, total solar eclipse. Okay, you just see bright light coming out of this black circle. That's how hidden, or that's how the moon hides during full solar eclipse, right? Now, this is the best time to study the outermost layer of the sun, and that is solar corona. Okay, now what is solar corona? Why is it the best time to study solar corona? And why do we need to study solar corona? We need to know about these things, and this current affairs topic would inform us about this. So let's talk about this. Okay, so solar eclipse, best time to study sun. So this was in the news. During total solar eclipse, when the moon passes directly between Earth and sun, the intense brightness of the solar disk, photosphere, is completely obscured. This brief astronomical window offers scientists a rare opportunity to conduct ground-based observations of sun's inner and outer corona. Now, what is solar corona? Look at this image of sun. This layer, these bright lights coming out, the sun rays that are coming out, this particular portion is known as corona. It is completely made up of plasma, highly ionized gas. Okay, the layer over here, the outermost surface layer, is known as photosphere, which is visible to us. But the solar rays that are coming out, You know, when you were kids, you used to make sun, the painting, whenever you were tasked with making paintings in your arts classes, art and crafts classes, you used to make sun like this. Kids make sun like this, right? And they make rays. These rays are corona, basically. Okay. Now, solar corona is important, but for that you need to know different layers of sun. Now, sun, if you peel sun like an onion, okay, if you peel away the skins of this onion called sun, there are various layers. Okay, so we will start with the innermost layer and then we'll go to the outermost layer. Okay, so the innermost layer is core, where nuclear fusion reaction takes place and sun gets its energy. That energy gets, that energy travels outwards. Then comes the radiative zone, then convective zone. This is the interior of the sun, very hot. Then comes the visible portion of sun to us, the photosphere, surface layer. Beyond that surface layer, there is a magnetic layer called chromosphere, okay, which is called the lower atmosphere of sun. And then there is corona. Okay, now remember, the surface of the sun is around 6000 degrees Celsius, but temperatures in sun's corona, the outermost layer, reaches 1 million to 3 million degrees Celsius. Okay, now why is that? Why? The surface of the sun is cooler than its outer atmosphere. This is the biggest paradox, and for that you need to study sun's corona. Okay, that is why it is important. Coronal heat paradox. While the visible surface is 6000 or 5500 degrees Celsius, the outer atmospheric corona reaches 1 million, 1.8 million degree or 1 million degrees Celsius. Now, why is that? Currently, there are two theories that are given to explain this phenomena, but there is no consensus behind any theory. One is Alfvén waves. Low frequency EM waves propagating along solar magnetic field lines, transferring kinetic and magnetic energy into coronal plasma. This kinetic and magnetic energy from lower layers gets converted into heat energy when it reaches solar corona, and that's why it heats it up. Then there is another theory, magnetic reconnection, explosive realignment of intertwined magnetic field lines releasing immense thermal energy. Now, these are the two hypotheses, right? But there is no consensus behind one. And to know which hypothesis is correct, you need to study sun's corona. And solar eclipse gives you the perfect opportunity for that. Why? Why solar eclipse gives you the perfect opportunity? Why total solar eclipses are crucial? The photosphere is nearly 1,000,000 times brighter than corona. When you are taking a look at the sun from naked eye, this brightness of photosphere blocks any analysis of corona. Corona is not visible properly. You only see the photosphere because photosphere is extremely bright. Okay, so it is the blinding power of photosphere. Now, to study sun's corona, what do the astronomers do? Well, they use their telescopes and they use a particular instrument in their telescopes called coronagraphs. What does that coronagraph do? It is a particular disk that hides the sun completely in your telescope, much like the moon is hiding the sun. Okay, but these artificial coronagraphs suffer from a problem called optical diffraction. Now, you don't need to get into too much technical details. Just remember, artificial disks which hide the sun in telescopes, they suffer from diffraction problem, and that is why your analysis of solar corona is not that perfect. But that is not the case when the moon itself hides the sun. Natural coronagraph. Okay. Ground-based observatories such as those linked with Center of Excellence utilize total eclipse to map complex magnetic field loops, active regions, solar flares coming out of sun. Okay. Now the thing is, why do you need to study solar atmosphere? Why do you want to study it? The thing is, sun ejects highly charged ionized particles called solar flares, and sometimes these highly ionized and energetic emissions come from corona, called coronal mass ejections. When they reach Earth, they sometimes do a lot of damages to satellites and whatnot. Therefore, proper awareness of solar weather would help space scientists and astronomers plan their space-related activities better. Okay. Okay, whenever there is a solar flare, well, it hampers satellite operations. Okay, it hampers electricity grids on Earth, and well, it hampers radio wave communication, because radio wave communication uses the topmost layer of Earth's atmosphere, ionosphere. It hampers ionosphere also. GPS satellites do not work whenever there are solar flares. Now, if you are able to predict solar flares, won't you be able to plan your activities better, space-related activities better? Hence, it is important to study the sun. Right? Now, there are various instruments that have already been sent to space to study the sun. One is from ISRO, mission Aditya L1, then Punch mission from NASA. There are various missions and the name of their countries. It is given in your notes. A similar table is given in your notes, so do check it out. Right? That would be all. And now let's quickly shift our focus to last news item of the day, and that is solid waste management in India. You see, India has a huge population, and India's urban population is also on the rise. And whenever urban population is on the rise, well, a lot of waste generation is also on the rise. Now, waste management in India suffers from various problems. Now, to solve that problem, because if you are not able to manage your wastes, well, then there are environmental consequences, health consequences, sanitation consequences, hygiene consequences. It's really problematic. So you need to manage your wastes properly. Useful waste can be segregated and recycled. Unuseful waste can be disposed of properly. You need to manage these wastes, right? So for that, in 2016, government launched solid waste management rules. Then these rules were updated in 2026, okay? And the updation was much required. But recently, Supreme Court found out that these rules, though are very good, they're not being implemented properly. And if these rules, they might appear good on paper, but if they are not implemented properly, then what's the use, right? Therefore, Supreme Court gave certain directions so that these rules are implemented properly. Now, what are those directions? What are these rules? We need to investigate the entire matter, and therefore we will do precisely that. So let's begin. Solid waste management in India. So Supreme Court of India directed Environment Ministry to formulate comprehensive guidelines for imposing, collecting environmental compensation for violations of SWM rules. Basically, they have directed Ministry of Environment to better implement SWM rules. Okay. Now, let's talk about SWM rules, evolution of waste management in India. So remember, I told you it was in 2026 when solid waste management rules were enacted. Okay. It was a municipal-centric sanitation mandate. MCs would be responsible, municipal corporations. Okay. Reliance on large landfills and dump sites. The one, if you have ever been to Delhi by road, you'll see just at the outskirts of Delhi, there are these huge dump sites. Okay. Mountains of Delhi waste. So like that. Limited penalty or monitoring mechanism. So these rules were faulty. Hence they were updated. The new framework says that you have to segregate the waste at source only. Okay, whenever you collect waste from a particular home or a factory, you have to segregate into 4 categories. Dry waste, wet waste, sanitary waste like sanitary pads, diapers, and certain hazardous special waste like hazardous waste, electrical appliances and all. Segregate it at source and deal with them separately. This is really important. When you mix these waste items together, when you lump them together, it is very difficult to recycle or dispose them off safely. So this needs to be done. Decentralized circular economy. Remember circular economy we discussed in the previous lecture. Recycle the waste items. So from this wet waste or dry waste, if you can find a particular plastic item that can be reused, do that. And district collector enforcement and Supreme Court oversight. This is done by Supreme Court only. We'll talk about this. Okay. Now, what are the core features of the 2026 update? Extended bulk waste generator responsibility. Bulk waste generator. If there is a huge factory, government has put a threshold. Okay. Like for example, if there is a factory established in more than 10 acres of land, something like that. Okay. If there is a huge factory, that factory would be called, institution would be called bulk waste generator. Their responsibility has been increased to a great level. It is not the waste collectors who would segregate this waste. These people would segregate this waste. It is their responsibility, and various responsibilities are listed down. And if they do not comply, penal provisions are given. Penalties are given. Then digital monitoring and centralized online portal. There is a centralized online portal through which Central Pollution Control Board is able to track the sources of waste, where the waste is going, how is it being disposed, how is it being recycled, everything on a single dashboard. Refuse derived fuel substitution. Okay, what is refuse derived fuel? All this organic waste can be converted into fuel. Okay, so certain electricity cement factories have been asked that 5% or 10% of your fuel requirements should come from RDF only. Okay, the remaining 90% can come from petrol, diesel and whatnot. Clear? So this is done so that you recycle this. Organic waste is recycled. And polluter pays principle. If any particular institution violates these guidelines, heavy fines would be imposed, and those fines would be used for, well, environmental sustainability. So polluter pays principle and environmental compensation to the victims of any pollution related accident. Clear? Now, what are the issues in India? Why did the Supreme Court, I mean, why was Supreme Court involved? Why should you involve Supreme Court? Supreme Court had no choice. Clear? Because these rules, no matter how good they are on paper, they were not being implemented properly. Now, what were the issues that Supreme Court had to step in? Number one, segregation at source is a problem. Not many households do that. Okay, so this is the issue. Then, even when the waste collectors collect segregated waste, when they transport that waste from one place to another on trucks, they mix both dry and wet waste together. They dump them together. So the whole point of segregation gets diluted. This is a problem. Remixing during transit, this is a problem. Then, underdeveloped material recovery facilities. Once this waste is collected, you take them to material recovery facilities. Okay, in these material recovery facilities, they recover the useful material that can be recycled. Well, these are not working properly. And over reliance on dump sites. You put wet waste, dry waste, some e-waste also in these sanitary landfills. Sanitary landfills are only for organic waste where they'll get decomposed. But you use non-organic waste also and dump it in sanitary landfills. The mountains of waste that you find outside Delhi, just like that. Now these inorganic waste items, polluted waste items or poisonous waste items also, they get leached into the soil and then they, well, enter groundwater, also pollute, cause water pollution, and nearby areas get affected. So this is the problem. So what has the Supreme Court advised? Well, the Supreme Court has said that up till now, as per the 2026 rules, MC was responsible, the single nodal agency, or the buck stopped here. Now, the district collector, DM or DC of that area would be held singly responsible. That DC can pass orders if a particular factory is not following the rules. Well, the DC can also order cutting their electricity connection. This can happen. Okay, DC has been given significant powers and responsibility. This DC will create solid waste management cells of experts and pollution control board members to do raids, investigation into pollution. Then strict statutory sanctions. Whoever violates these rules, strict punishment should be there. And dedicated SWM cadres. Well, there is shortage of employees, shortage of people in these sanitation departments, well, or solid waste management departments. So the government or the district collector should create a special service, SWM cadres, people who are qualified and trained to basically be employed in solid waste management. Well, create a separate cadre for that. We need workforce for that. So these are some Supreme Court directions. Now there is some more way forward suggested which are given in your notes, so do go through that as well. Right? That would be all. So with that, we conclude today's session. So thank you so much for watching, everyone, and I'm sure it has added value to your preparation. But it will add more value if, number one, you're consistent and regular with this lecture series, and number two, you revise this lecture from the notes provided by us. So I'm hoping that you'll precisely do that. In that hope, I shall take your leave with the promise of seeing you again with another set of news items. Thank you, everyone.